Nimat Sudat is an Afghan LGBTQ activist who's hoping and helping to get those people out of the country to safety. And he's joining me now from San Diego. Thank you so much, Nimat, for coming on with us to talk about this really important and heartbreaking story that's unfolding for the LGBTQ community in Afghanistan. Can you give us a sense of what life for them is like on the ground there now?
Thank you, Bianna. Life is basically LGBT people have no outlet for them. They are trapped between the Taliban and ISIS, their families and society all crushing them. There's no way for them to get out. They've lost their jobs. They've lost their livelihood. A lot of people on my list of 800 plus people who are LGBT do not have passports, do not have visas. They're starving, and they feel like they've been betrayed by the international community, because the last 20 years they were at the forefront of bringing social progress into Afghanistan. They were basically working as wedding dancers and different functions. They were hosting like concerts and fashion shows and working in the mass media pop culture, and on TV they had like youth programming where they would talk about controversial topics. All of these things, despite being criminalized. So while the US, for example, has prioritized evacuation of interpreters and translators who are considered allies in the battlefield in the war on terror or the war on radical Islam, it's really been LGBT people who've been pushing the social progress on the ground in Afghanistan, these are the courageous warriors that have been doing the battle of ideas. And now they have nowhere to go. They've been hiding in rooftops. They've been hiding in basements. Now it's so cold you can't even hide in a rooftop. They've been hiding, anywhere they could find. They've become internally displaced because there's a Taliban kill list for LGBT people. So they're just basically moving from one place to another within the country. And a lot of them, it's sad to say, a lot of them have been forced, even in this Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, to be forced to do sex work because there's nothing else left for them to do. And a lot of them are in conditions where they're being held as sex slaves and prisoners. It's a horrible situation, and really the situation is becoming magnified because now we have the winter coming. The Hunger Games is going to be reenacted in Afghanistan, and there's nothing the LGBT people can do. They're going to slowly all perish under the Taliban's extermination campaign against LGBT people.
And it's coming as part of a cascade of just ominous and devastating headlines, and numbers and statistics continue to come out. The World Food Program says 98% of Afghans do not have enough to eat. As you mentioned, winter is coming. The economy is collapsing. Every day, the country does seem to be moving more and more towards a failed state status. The Taliban and its repression of citizens has been in the news, and we have spent a lot of attention on it, and rightly so, in particular their treatment of women and girls. What is their stance publicly to the LGBT community?
That's a great question. Well, Mullah Gul Rahim, who is a Taliban judge, last July told a Bild newspaper, the German newspaper, saying that basically there is no amnesty for LGBT people. We know now that even the people they promised amnesty for in the peace deal, they're not even giving amnesty to. But with LGBT, they basically have said either you're going to be toppled with walls or you're going to be stoned to death. And the Minister of Finance in October told Reuters, basically, under Sharia law, there is no room for LGBT people. LGBT people are a good barometer for what extremism is like under Islamic Sharia law. So they've been a force for moderation and secularism in Afghanistan for the last 20 years. And now that we know what the Taliban have been doing to different kinds of groups, this silent war, this hidden war, you have a nation of LGBT people who are like Anne Franks, hiding and screaming in silence, and no one is hearing their voices. No one is interested in taking them out. There are countries like Canada that have taken the initiative that realize that, there is a serious risk towards LGBT people in Afghanistan. They've put them on their priority list in terms of their evacuation that they're planning to do. But what about the United States? What about the UK? What about other European allies, NATO allies, other countries in the world? Why aren't they speaking up for LGBT people? It's like you use LGBT people to be your foot soldiers to bring social transformation in Afghanistan, but now you're like, okay, well, we really don't have we really don't have the desire to evacuate you and relocate you and resettle you. That's just a horrible thing. What does that say about us and our culture and our society and what values we have if we're not going to go to take the most vulnerable people in the most dangerous country right now? People are saying that the kind of extreme brutality and violence, state-sanctioned violence that LGBT people are facing in Afghanistan is unprecedented in our lifetime. I mean, the only good example we could compare this to is under Hitler, under Nazi Germany, when they basically took homosexuals to the camps and exterminated them. There's really nothing like that we've seen at this kind of wide-scale, ubiquitous level that's happening in Afghanistan right now, where people are being dragged from their homes. Taliban are coming to village elders and saying, hand us over your homosexuals and transgenders. If you don't, then we're going to do to you what we will do to them. I mean, what does that remind you of? A completely tyrannical terrorist regime, and this is the people we're negotiated with, this is the people we made peace with. The least we could do is basically not leave any LGBT person behind. Make sure that every single LGBT person is out of Afghanistan and out of harm's way and given us asylum in a country where they could live freely.
And Nima, let me give our viewers a sense, not only obviously from what you're detailing is how repressive the life is for LGBTQ in Afghanistan, but let's listen to sound from an Afghan gay man who luckily was able to leave the country. But here's what he said back in September.
So when they know about you, they definitely know that you have been involved in certain acts and you identify yourself as a certain person. In this case. So they will either throw you out from a tall building, that's their law. And now, in 1996, there were not a lot of tall buildings in Kabul, but now there are a lot of taller buildings. They'll just throw you out. If you became alive, that's you. Or they will throw a wall on you, that's their law. Or they will just shoot you, the easiest one.
I mean, does this horrific detail match what you're hearing in the sense of what any LGBTQ member living in Afghanistan right now is fearful of on a daily basis?
Biana, if you were to see my emails, the messages I get from social media, on Signal, on WhatsApp, you would be horrified by the kind of images and videos people are sending me of the brutality that has been taken on them. Pretty much like the Taliban are going door to door looking for LGBT people. And anybody that they find, and any accusation, they'll take your phone to find any homosexual content. If they find it, you're eliminated. If they don't find it, because now my LGBT community that I represent, we have an information campaign. We're telling them to hide and lock your information and delete it. So they basically, they will still get punished just on the mere fact that they have been accused of being LGBT people. And so the Taliban right now, we have between the moderate wing that just wants to expel LGBT people and other degenerates so that they can negotiate with the U.S. and international community in exchange for legitimacy. And we have the radical elements that are saying, you know what, no, we don't want them to be free. We want to make sure that LGBT people remain here so that we keep them as prisoners and slaves, and we tortured them until each and every one of them perish. It's like, for them, they don't know how to run a government, so for them, they get joy and pleasure from the complete and total annihilation of LGBT people. And not just LGBT people. We know that anybody that they deem as an offense to Islam and their interpretation of it. Let's remember that LGBT people are the worst creatures according to the Taliban and Sharia law for being homosexual, for being sodomite, and being apostates.
Well,
and on top of that, they know that.
So I was just briefly, because we only have a moment left, and just to get a sense of what can be done to help the community, if in fact there is this battle going on between the moderate and more extreme wings within the Taliban, what can the U.S. government and its allies do to perhaps work with that more moderate wing to if possible, negotiate their exfiltration?
Yes, I think what the United States needs to give P2 designations as refugees for LGBT people, and NATO allies need to all step up to Canada's example. You know, and support my efforts. You know, I have a GoFundMe page on my social media accounts. I'm also planning to start a nonprofit called Roshaniya. And also what you can do is just listen to the voices, reach out to LGBT people in Afghanistan and help them directly, sponsor them. There's stories like, for example, they just want to live. That's all they want, Biana. And there are some of them that are dreamers. They're like, Ilyas wants to go and become an astronaut and
Yeah.
serve the country that he gets asylum to. Anisa is a lesbian woman. She and her partner want to be able to chance to get a university education, and they want to become cosmetic plastic surgeons and make people beautiful. That's all these people want.
Yeah,
We're not asking for much.
It's not asking for much at all, and I think you just said it powerfully there. They just want the chance to live. Thank you so much for joining us today and giving us some insight into what is happening on the ground there in Afghanistan. Thank you so much for all of your work in trying to help the community as well.